You got the right place at the exact right time. It is the Sixers Talk podcast in all of its splendor. So glad you could join us once again. We are brought to you by Wilmington University. WilMU Works. It is Ben Berry, our producer, co-host extraordinaire, here with me, Danny Pommells. A lot to get to, although the offseason isn't very exciting right now in a lot of aspects, but it seems to be the Ben Simmons saga, which continues to pay dividends for us as we look at the Sixers offseason. We'll get to just what exactly is going on with teams who are interested in Ben Simmons. But I think the first order of business to get to, Ben, is this trade exception expiring. September 7th, the Sixers had a almost $8.2 million trade exception, which expired. That was yesterday as we're recording this on September 8th. It's funny because, I think with the new regime of Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey, there's been a bit of a switch from how people viewed the Sixers front office when Elton Brand was in charge. Because if Elton Brand had allowed this to happen, I could see fans just filleting him about not using the trade exception, letting the money expire. What is he doing? His incompetence and things like that. But here, Daryl Morey does it, and I definitely anticipate people asking him about it once we talk to him before training camp starts here in less than a month. But there's not much has been made of it so far on a grand scale. There's some murmurs of Sixers fans who may be disgruntled, but all in all, there's not much that has been made leading up to the trade exception. And now that it is expired and they didn't use it, you haven't heard much about it. So am I overreacting? Does it bother you? Do you feel like it's not even a big deal? Or do you feel like this is maybe a watershed moment that fans should remember should things unravel later in this regime?
Oh, Danny. I think the reason it's not a bigger deal right now is because we have the Ben Simmons saga, which we'll get to later. It's continuing. It's like a Marvel movie. It's part 25 at this point. That's the only reason that's not being made a bigger deal right now. Because as you said, if this would have been Elton Brand, fans would have been flaming him. And since you and I have met, I have flamed more than enough members of the Sixers organization, whether you thought it was fair or Paul or Noah, Amy, whoever, in the newsroom. But that's what I come to do. I make sure people get their due. This is a bad look, man. Daryl, right. I don't know. I don't know if your assistant forgot to tell you. I don't know if they had other things coming on mind. It seems like they just unprepared, and maybe all their attention is on Ben Simmons and figuring that out. But you can't you said it was $8 million trade exception. They just
almost 8.2. Yeah.
Yeah. That's just money wasted. And I'm not a billionaire, but if I lose $8, I'm upset. So right. Losing $8 million, it's negligence. It unprepared. It falls on, well, definitely Daryl Morey, because since he got here, I said he would straighten things out, and he's done a lot good.
Yeah, value
is really bad. Yeah, so this is on him. It's on Elton Brand. Is there anyone that that gets a check from over there and can walk into that building with their security card?
Listen, I'm sure they'll spin it once we talk to him. Daryl Morey is, well-versed and really good at, making things slant one way or another and making people see his perspective. And he's a good talker, and all that stuff plays into his favor when it comes to explaining why this happened. But, I'm sure they're going to say, we like what we have and there was nothing out there for us and things like that. But, this trade exception coming up and losing the value in that Al Horford deal, like I said, hindsight is 2020. So if things continue to unravel with Ben Simmons and no value is secured there, if you continue not to get past the second round and suddenly people will start losing their jobs, you're going to look back on this as like, well, this was another lost opportunity in the Sixers trying to build a championship contender. I mean, you've seen what the Nets have done this offseason with the Lakers. The Bucks have won the championship. Toronto's reloading. Miami is reloading. So the Sixers need to seize all of these opportunities, and all of us, in this era of the process, which started with Sam Hinkie valuing assets and, having optionality being one of his key trademarks. And, you have some optionality, some value in this trade exception that you just let, expire and don't do anything with. It's a little weird, man. And I think that, people should be paying attention to this more than the Ben Simmons stuff, because this is actually tangible. Like, we got dates and dollar amounts and all that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Where the Simmons thing is just out there. Like, there's so much speculation and rumors and innuendo, and, you're not getting anything concrete. It's not like Ben has actually said something. It's just reports and
so the Ben
stuff
thing
you get
is
third hand.
The Ben Simmons saga is more juicy in its dessert, per se. Follow this analogy. While this trade exception is like, it's crystal clear. Like,
It's tangible, yeah.
Use it or not. It's like,
Right.
There's no dancing around it like you can do, and people can speculate and say, oh, Ben Simmons for Dame, Ben for Bradley Beal, or Kyrie, or something like that.
Exactly.
So people can spin that and make it a bigger story. This is like, you use it, you have it or you don't. There's no in between.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. It's weird. And, we'll be hearing from these guys here shortly as training camp gets started later this month. But I just feel like if you're telling me, hey, we found value in Andre Drummond, and, we found value deeper in the draft with Maxey and Matisse, and, we're maximizing Danny Green's value and what he brings, the corner threes and all that, and all these analytics and numbers and things like that. But you have this trade exception stare you in the face where you didn't even have to use all of it, bro. Like, you could have used, 5 million of it, 3 million of it. You didn't even have to use all of it. And they don't do anything with it. Warren, I understand, they're trying to probably do things behind the scenes with the Simmons stuff, but, this coming and going, you don't get anything from this, regardless of what you do with Ben. So I feel like it was a big missed opportunity. I'm sure they're going to try to put their spin on it, but I want fans and people listening out there not to, let this be something that they don't remember. I think this is an important point, and what this regime is and how they utilize assets that are available to them, because, oh, great, you pulled off the Horford deal and were able to get from out from under that contract, and, also bring in Seth Curry and get rid of Josh Richardson. You still didn't get past the second round. And here, conceivably, you have this $8 million that you can use to try to finagle something, and nothing happens. It's suspect to me.
It's bad. And for those that aren't following along, we don't have Noah here to break it down, so I'm going to do my best. The trade exception was its expiration date. Think of buying milk and not using it by the expiration date. That's as simple as I can put it. It's a waste of money. And Daryl Morey and Sixers brass just wasted $8.2 million by not doing anything, because I think they're focused on the Ben Simmons saga.
And that's so short-sighted, man. It's like you once again, if you're really saying they're focused on the Ben Simmons saga, which I agree with, is that's probably the thing that's foremost in their mind, and maybe they didn't feel like there was anyone who could actually make a difference to use the trade exception, or maybe they're worried about cap space. I don't know. Those are all excuses in essence, but it just gives you another example of Simmons kind of hog tying the organization, so to speak, where you also, are a distraction and them trying to do like regular business because they're worried about you. He's saying he doesn't want to come to training camp, which lowers his value. He says it late in the off season, right before camp starts, which also ties the Sixers' hands and doesn't give them, the same value in return that they could possibly get. So he screws the organization that way, which I outlined on the last podcast, my perspective on that. So I don't know, man, just another reason why Ben should be gone, I guess, because if he's the thing that's distracting them from doing this, then like, good riddance.
Well, for the listeners, we're going to have a whole Ben Simmons segment, so I'm going to follow up to what Danny just said when we get there. But back to the trade exception, I can't think of another reason or excuse Some people are going to say whatever Daryl Morey says is an excuse. Reason, excuse. I can't think of another reason or excuse on why it wasn't used. So at least I can foresee them saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. We're sorry. We were focused on Ben Simmons." They want to say that.
They're
exactly.
never going to say that. Right.
But
exactly.
like, I can at least believe that. Just anything else, if you say, "Oh, we just completely forgot about it," that's practically malpractice. That's not you doing your job. Or saying they couldn't find value or something like that, that doesn't pass the smell test. So it's just, I can't think of another excuse in my head on why they wouldn't have used it.
Morey is a spin doctor, man. So I'm sure he'll come out with something, and hopefully they're able to, show why they didn't use it by making the Simmons trade and bringing players in who would have filled that space had they, maybe they need a roster spot. Who knows? But maybe they'll actually be able to show, and we'll have something to look at that will explain why they didn't use it instead of them telling us that it didn't work out.
You're a lot more optimistic about the front office than I am.
Ready to make a move? A Wilmington University education can take you where you want to go. WilmU works online or in person. Learn more at wilmu.edu. Man, it's like a soap opera at this point with the Ben Simmons stuff. I kind of painted the picture on the last podcast that when this meeting went down in LA, I imagined it was at Ben Simmons' new multi-million-dollar mansion, and he's like by the pool with a robe and slippers, and like Elton Brand and Josh Harris and Doc Rivers are all trying to like convince him to come back, and he's just like playing the Hollywood style with his shades on and like acting like devil may care. So in my head, that's the vision I get. Well, we haven't heard from Simmons. Like if you want to leave the organization and you're so disgruntled, maybe say something, make a statement from your camp. Rich Paul speak on your behalf, whatever. But we haven't heard anything from Ben. But the rumors, the innuendo, all that stuff continues to swirl. And it really depends on what you believe, who you believe. There's so much stuff out there. But of the things that are out there, teams that have been locked in on Ben from the giddy up, who we have heard have shown a lot of interest, the Cavs, the Timberwolves. Reports continue to swirl about, the Cavs being a team that's really, hard charging and coming after Ben. Recently Mark Stein in his newsletter on his Substack on Tuesday mentioned that he felt like the Cavaliers' acquisition of Lauri Markkanen kind of was an odd piece that they could use to trade for Ben, because they had been in from the giddy up. And then you had this report from, which we'll get to, we'll dive into that, but you also have this competing report from John Krasinski, who covers the Minnesota Timberwolves for The Athletic, just saying that because of Ben wanting out and saying that he won't report to training camp, suddenly the Sixers' price conceivably comes down because the market's cold in his estimation, and that the Timberwolves, what they were willing to offer, becomes a lot more palatable and interesting for the Sixers to make the trade for Simmons. So he believes that, the Timberwolves are in a stronger position today than they've ever been, or even in the last couple of weeks, because of how things have transpired with Ben. You had a point you wanted to get to that related to all this. Do you remember what that was?
I remember exactly what it was. 2 months ago, when the season ended, a little over 2 months ago, after that awful Game 7 that I'm not going to, make us relive in our minds.
That changed everything.
It changed everything. And the reports came out that, that the Sixers are open to trades, and Rich Paul and Ben Simmons are open to playing somewhere else. And people said that Ben Simmons' value wasn't down despite what we saw in Game 7 or that series overall.
I just think overall his value, I think what people thought was the value league-wide was higher than what we thought it was here.
Everyone that said the value was still up, you're a liar. Or maybe you weren't lying. Maybe the person that told you the value was still high. Liar. It's not that high because he's still here. And Daryl Morey and the Sixers aren't getting close to what they want in return. So that's what I've been thinking. That when you brought it up last segment, that's just what popped in my head. Liar. I have another part, but I will come back after we talk about all these newer trade scenarios, whether it's the
Yeah.
Kings, the Cavs. What are they offering back that the Sixers want?
Well, we can go team by team, but I feel like if to your point that you just made, like if Ben, if things start to fizzle and he doesn't want to be here and the team, they're both sides are willing to part ways. It was like an amicable parting of ways. I feel like his value at that point was like, well, here's this multi-time all-star defensive player of the year runner-up on the market who has his flaws, but the upside and the what he can do for us, it may be different, a change of scenery and all that. Like that's like the general thought. And then as the summer goes on and you hear the asking price and what they want from other teams and the players that they're hoping to acquire, and then Simmons and then that kind of brings it down a little bit. And then Simmons doubles down with saying he's not reporting the training camp. All of a sudden, everything's like in the tank. Like it's just a weird kind of domino effect. I think that's how.
I think it's a disaster of a movie that I'm enjoying watching because it's wildly entertaining. That's what I'm thinking. And a lot of places, whether it was trading him to the Blazers for CJ McCollum. The Blazers struggle horrific defensively, but it's not like they have a lot of offensive options after CJ and Dame. So now Dame's running partner is someone that won't shoot, can't shoot, won't shoot. So that's not going to happen. You got the Warriors thing, and a lot of people saying that Ben and Draymond won't work together. If Draymond's open from beyond the arc, he's shooting it. He will at least shoot. So I just don't think his value is that high because I would assume that every GM, president of basketball operations, anybody in the front office have cable like you and me, and they saw that game, whether it was on TNT or ESPN, whatever channel it was on. So his stock just plummeted. I mean, since it's been 5 years, there's been no proof that he has improved in those areas. So why would you give up the King's ransom to get him?
I think that upside is what they draft players on. Players have been acquired for their upside and their potential. So I think Simmons' upside and his ceiling is a lot higher than that one moment. So yes. He passed up the dunk, but I feel like there's more to it.
Upside is a spin, as you said, that Daryl Morey, the king of spin. Upside is another term where you could just say risky.
It is risky, but he has the resume to go with it. So maybe if that moment ever happened again and he's on the Trailblazers, Cavs, Kings, or what have you, and he passes it up, it is one of those like, oh my God, he did it again type things. But
I will hit everyone with the Denny Green. He is who we thought he was.
Right. But if he brings a defensive stop that catapults a victory, or he makes an extra pass that sets up the three that wins it, that it's a different storyline. So I just feel like there's more room for him to grow and be more than what the Sixers need on another team where they won't need him to be as involved on the offensive end. But let's put some quantifiers on this whole idea of his value and what they might be able to get for him. Once again, a team, the Cavs, who have been in on Simmons from the start, reportedly. Lauri Markkanen, I mentioned. Colin Sexton, another guy, and Cedi Osman, the guy we had talked about in the past during the season, who the Sixers maybe would have acquired in the buyout market or at the trade deadline or something like that, but he's still on the Cavs. So a player some fans may be more familiar with, although he is a role player, bench player, but he does have a skill set that the Sixers could utilize. So you market those three players along with a draft pick, a pick swap, something like that. Does that start to entice you or make you feel like, well, let's pull the trigger or maybe making a deal with the Cavs?
It doesn't. Here's why. Colin Sexton, I think he's a phenomenal young player. I enjoy watching him play. He's intense. He brings it on the defensive end of the floor. His offensive game has made improvements since he got into the league. Jumper getting stronger step by step. The Lauri Markkanen part of it, is my hesitation. I think he's a good role player, but you can't play him next to Tobias Harris unless you have him at the 5. And if you put him at the 5, I think he's just going to get bullied by a lot better centers in the league. So that's really where my hold up is.
Yeah, but I think the marketing is a great example of teams trying to get guys because of their potential and hoping to change the scenery might bring about, something else. But I see your point 100%. Like Tobias Harris thrived at the 4. You can't then bring in marketing to play that position as well. Although the Sixers did need a backup 4 in some instances and someone who can produce at that. But you're not trading Ben Simmons for backup 4 and a point guard who's probably going to take minutes away from Tyrese Maxey. So it just doesn't, that doesn't quite make as much sense to me. But I think that, to your point, if the market is dictating that Simmons' value has shrunk, then this is the type of trade that you might be able to, this is the trade you're going to have to probably be happy with, or the type of trade that you're like getting Bradley Beal or Jimmy Butler or Bradley Beal or Damian Lillard or De'Aaron Fox. Like those guys are all like staying put reportedly. So either you're going to wait and put all your eggs in the basket of hopefully getting an all-star in return, which is super risky for a dude who doesn't want to be here and guys who said they don't want to get traded, or this is the type of deal that you're probably going to be saddled with. Are you like super upset? Are you continuing to just play this game with Simmons and have him sit out and get fined, possibly $227,000 a day for sitting out? Like, what do you do now? Like, if this is the best you're going to get, he won't report or play. This is the type of trade you're going to have to settle on.
A lot of people say they're not willing to play, whether it's football or basketball, NFL, NBA, until they start missing checks. I think the first NBA.
Do you feel that way about him? Is that going to move him if he loses $1.3 million a week for training camp? Is that really going to? I mean, he just put $15 million almost down on a house, and he doesn't live here in Philly.
Well, no, I hear what you're saying. So I don't think too many people are going to go to Le'Veon Bell route, what he did with the Steelers several years ago. I don't think too many people are actually doing that. And it's something I meant to look up after our last pod. Maybe I'll ask Noah later today. Because in the NFL, I believe if you don't report by week 10, then
you can't play at all.
You can't play at all. And I believe it's just like resets. You're right. The contract just goes to the next year. So I would like to know. I need to figure it out. If the NBA has something similar, like if he's not playing by March, like
wait. So now we're thinking that this guy will miss the first 4 months of the season. Is that what we're saying now?
If he's saying he's not reporting to training camp and he's not playing, or if that's what his agent is saying and the reports out there, because I like disaster. I just want to see what kind of happens that way.
I like disaster.
Daryl Morey and the Brass should call his bluff. I want to take.
I want to
take the Cleveland deal. Yeah, I want to take the
Cleveland
deal unless it was a. I want to take the Cleveland deal unless it was several first-round draft picks, unprotected draft picks attached to it.
Charles Barkley alluded to that. The point that he's hoping the Sixers. He said it on the Mike Missinelli show that someone in the organization's quote has some stones, and will, say, you know what, Ben, you don't want to report. Well, I guess you won't be playing. And it's a stalemate. You know what I'm saying? So there is something to that of taking the stalemate approach. That stalemate approach is what helped the Sixers land Jimmy Butler for basically not a whole lot. So can that same thing work here with Ben? Obviously, the value and the type of players that completely, a juxtaposition. Whereas Jimmy Butler helped the Timberwolves overachieve and get to the postseason for the first time in a long time. Ben Simmons has, in a lot of people's eyes, underachieved and not helped the Sixers get over the hump. So We mentioned Minnesota. Is there anything with Minnesota that entices you? I mean, they've also been in it from the start. I mentioned this John Krasinski report of him talking about that, the strike while the iron's hot. The Timberwolves have the best value here. There's Malik Beasley. I don't think they're parting ways with Anthony Edwards. D'Angelo Russell is there. Anything there with the Timberwolves, with the draft picks or anything that you feel like is compensation you'd be happy with?
If there's no Edwards, maybe Russell and a bunch of draft picks. Maybe. I'm listening if the Wolves call with that offer. I'm listening. But I would still be hesitant. I understand why Daryl Morey is slow to make the move, pull the trigger on that, for the lack of a better term. Cat's not an option. I've seen people on the YouTube comments, Cat and stuff like that. No. Anthony Edwards, maybe.
If you think Ben is soft and you want to bring in Cat, who Jimmy Butler has deemed soft as baby, sugar honey iced tea, like
I'm not saying I would. I said I'm just going back. I've looked at the YouTube comments over the past couple of months, and just the ridiculousness. And I got a whole rant I want to get on to about someone saying, "So just keep Ben and let him come back. He can play well for you." And blah blah blah. But the Wolves, if it's the best offer out there, if the Sixers aren't going to call us bluff, either Edwards or Russell, maybe both, and a bunch of draft picks. Him and Cat are tight. They play Call of Duty together, but I don't see it happening.
I don't know any reason why the Timberwolves will let go of Edwards. The shame is like Dame Lillard and De'Aaron Fox. It just doesn't make sense for them to do that in order to acquire Ben. But look at where we are. Look at how this has been a horrible offseason for Sixers fans. You go from being bounced by some dude who thinks Drake is better than Jay-Z all time, Trae Young. You get bounced by this dude and the Atlanta Hawks in a 7-game series where you had home court advantage. And then Ben Simmons and the deterioration, and then the trade exception, and like come on, man. Like, this has been a rough off season.
It's been rough. It's been bad. It would make for a great little docuseries.
Lord.
If there was like a 30 for 30 on the process, you start with the process. You end either here or like what happens afterwards if there was a championship to come out of it. But it's been rough.
I can't even think about a championship anymore. I want one, but what the reality is telling me is this is not a championship team, period. That's what reality is telling me. You're losing Ben Simmons, probably not getting proper value in return. All the other teams in the division are better than you, or conference, I should say, are better than you.
Not all the teams, not the Magic.
Okay. All the contending teams is what I'm trying to say. All the teams who the Bucks, the Heat, conceivably are better.
In 2019, when
LaMarcus Aldridge retired and came back, and they still signed him.
In 2019, when someone moved back to Philly, started working at NBC Sports, they tried to tell you and Paul and Noah that Dan Roach and everyone else in the newsroom that this team had some holes. It wasn't a championship team. They was told they were insane. That was me for the listeners. I want to rub it in that I was right.
I would never have said what I just said coming into the playoffs last season. They got the number 1 seed. They survived. Everybody was healthy. The home court advantage was there. To me, that was the moment that I felt like they had all worked toward with the process and everything. I would never have thought we would be right here right now. But man, it has unraveled. It has unraveled in a way. Yeah, you're right.
Before we move on, there was a YouTube comment of someone saying the Sixers should just bring Ben back and run it back one last time. Give him another shot. You want to know why I want to tell that person they're dead wrong? You ever see the end of a marriage, after marriage counselor, after they gone away on a vacation again? It's over. You reached out to your lawyer, you're going through the divorce proceedings. This isn't to make light of divorce. It's just over. There's no working this out. The Sixers gave it their best try. I'm not going to sit here and say I think Ben gave it his best try, but he tried at least on some level. Just move on, lick your wounds, go your separate ways, wish for the other person the best, and don't look back. For the few people that were on the YouTube comments saying that Ben should come back for another season and run it back because time will heal this wound. It won't. It's over. It's done. We've all seen the relationship when it's coming to an end, and this one is over.
Quick question before we get out of here. If it's over and the divorce has happened, there's no mending fences with Ben. What is the relationship with Rich Paul like in the Sixers? Like, is that like you have to imagine that there's going to be a place where these two people, organizations, Clutch Sports and the Sixers cross paths again, because the NBA is a small world. There only is so many players and people are represented. The Sixers are one of the upper echelon teams in the East or in the NBA altogether. Is Rich Paul like a pariah now as well? Like, or do you not lump him in with Ben Simmons?
Yeah, I don't lump him in with Ben Simmons. I know he has a lot of power and say so, but
he's pulling the strings. He's
for the athletes he represent. I think the tricky thing is you have to take into account whether you're going to play nice with Rich Paul because of the clients that he represents and the prospective clients he could represent in the future when players come out for the draft. If they become a clutch athlete, I have to deal with Rich Paul again. And since the last time we had a Rich Paul client on our roster, it exploded and imploded right in front of us. So I think that's something that Daryl Morey and the Sixers have to think about going forward, even though when I said be petty and just have
Tyrese Maxey is a Clutch Sports guy. So you're going to have to deal with them in relation to him, hopefully here for a good while, because Maxey is definitely an asset that the Sixers want to hang on to, a player that they covet. He checks a lot of boxes on the court and off of it. So it's just a weird dichotomy, a weird situation. I think that Sixers fans need to continue to hold the organization accountable, keep a close eye on what's happening now. They forced you to endure the losing that has gotten to this point. So there needs to be some recompense for that. And a championship seems like that, but also they need to be held accountable for the decisions that come after that losing, which is supposed to facilitate the winning, like losing trade exceptions because they expired and you didn't want to spend the money, a disgruntled star player, discord within the organization. All of that they should be held accountable for, because from Colangelo to Fultz to Okafor to now Simmons, it has been a cascade of nonsense that probably should not have happened or doesn't happen in more sound winning organizations.
I hear you. It's a lot of people have to answer for a lot of things, especially if this thing goes downhill.
I'm just saying it's not over yet. It's not over yet. But the way it's trending is bad. Yeah. It is bad the way it's trending.
If it continues to trend downward, like a lot of people have to answer a lot of things. And I'm so hoping for a long form documentary on everything from the start when they traded Drew Holiday and company away to the draft in the MCW, his rookie of the year, trading him away.
You almost have to. There almost has to be.
Like there has to be a long form documentary on this. I want 2-3 hours at least.
2-3 hours. What do you want? You want the Netflix 10 episode joint? You want this? Spread it outside.
I want someone to do a deep dive. I want someone on camera, but they use the voice modulator and they're black. You can't see them.
Hey man,
like, yeah, man. Hinkie made that pick. I had nothing to do with that. I want all of that.
That would be phenomenal. One thing we do have to acknowledge that won't be on that documentary, whenever it does come out, is this T-shirt you have on, which steals from the Chick-fil-A logo and changes the C to a T, so it's Thick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A.
Are you Thick-fil-A? Is this your?
I'm thick with two C's. You know, I'll be in the gym. I'm 6 foot 245. You know, I be in the gym. I don't got rolls.
There he is.
I don't have many.
He said, "I don't have rolls."
I don't have many.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen. Get to know Ben Berry. Follow him on all social media platforms. That I am Ben Berry. I'm at D Pommells NBCS. Check us out next time on the Sixers Talk podcast. We appreciate you listening as always. Noah Levick coming back here soon. He had a fabulous vacation. Can't wait to hear about it. Thanks for listening. We're brought to you by Wilmington University. Wilmu Works. For Ben Berry, I'm Danny Pommells. We'll see you next time.